So, is secularism still relevant? Wait, serious? This is from the classical age between 8th century BC and 5th century AC, where people still believe in God with the concept of Hellenistic religion. What is Hellenistic? The concept of Hellenistic religion as the lead form of ancient Greek religion covers any of the various systems of belief and practices of the people who live under the influence of ancient Greek culture. They promote religion and morals using drama to bring out catharsis and to strengthen their faith, which make them a great empire. Medieval Age. In this era, Christianity moved as the main religion throughout the Western society. Drama became the medium by the church to make people realize the importance of the presence of God. The most famous play during the medieval age was Everyman, which talks about salvation, humility, and Catholic Church and also promotes morality. But then, all of that has changed into something that is more peculiar in the Renaissance period, which started to become modern or what to be known as the Rebirth era. Drama became a medium to convey the idea of secularism and the rise of freedom towards society. One of the plays that shows the birth of secularism was Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. The play shows his rejection of God's authority because of his desire for prohibited knowledge, which was considered as a sin in religion and worked as an element of secularism. The thought of the death of God. Do people ever think of this? Before the 14th century, maybe not, but in the 18th century, the Enlightenment talked a lot about dismissing God in their life. Interesting, isn't it? In this period, the starter of fundamentals and authority created ideas like freedom, tolerance, and the separation between church and state. Many inventions can be seen from this era, such as fire extinguishers, flush toilets, the idea of liberalism, and secularism. Not only that, they even created the publication of civil rights as they didn't believe in monarchy. As for that, secularism became an idea for the rise of freedom. So, how do they even relate to this? Ever heard this song before?
Figaro, 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 Figaro.
Remember this episode from Tom and Jerry? Yes, this is from Mozart. Mozart, an Austrian composer who was famous in the music world until now with most of his legendary music. One of his masterpieces was called The Marriage of Figaro. But this song was composed with a play by Pierre-Augustin Caron de Beaumarchais, a French playwright.
Zaffarla, perché voi non ripetete, ricevete questo qua, perché ho fatto un bel guadagno, perché ho fatto...
This play tells how the servants Figaro and Susanna succeed in getting married, foiling the efforts of their womanizer employer Count Almaviva to seduce Susanna and teach him a lesson in loyalty. Secularism in this play was the right for personal freedom, which can be seen from the abuse of power by the aristocracy, while the Count is taking advantage of his authority as a noble for his own personal freedom. Is being optimistic and believing everything works out for the greatest in the world are realistic? Story about an optimistic man who believed that everything happens for the best even when he encounters unfortunate events in his adventure but became pessimistic at the end of the story. Story from a novel called Candide written by Voltaire, a French writer who is famous for his criticism. Voltaire wrote Candide as a satire, mocking the moral and believing it is absurd that life is not always sunshine and rainbows. Voltaire ridiculed the nobles, church, and also the philosopher for their optimism. This shows the rebellion done by Voltaire in Enlightenment. The village life and every care that reigns, o'er youthful peasants and declining swains. what labor yields and what that labor past. Age, in its hour of languor, finds at last. What forms the real picture of the poor demands a song the muse can give no more. Social injustice. It may sound silly, but that's what has been viewed from this poem. The Village Made by George Crabbe, an English poet who writes most of his works based on his own life, which he came from the bleak countryside. His childhood and the poem similarly portray the realistic misery and degradation of rural poverty during the 18th century, even though the period brings out the equality ideology that promotes freedom. Morality. In the postmodern world, the absence of morality is caused by secularism ideology, which has been brought even before the modern world with the idea of the death of God. This highlighted that religious belief would eventually lose their social status, significance, and influence on the life of their adherents. However, the new era started to question the Enlightenment ideas, especially in secularism and the rise of freedom, as the truth behind the hidden agenda is exposed to the world.
In its 30th great year, it's the Truman Show!
The Truman Show, discussing the protagonist Truman, unaware that his whole life is a reality TV series where everyone except him are actors. The director of The Truman Show played the God in the Truman's life and took advantage of Truman's ignorance about the world.
And special effects, while the world he inhabits is in some respects counterfeit. There's nothing fake about Truman himself. No scripts, no cue cards. It isn't always Shakespeare, but it's genuine. It's a life.
I'm not gonna make it.
Truman then starts to question his existence after noticing the same repetition every day and tries to escape from the artificial world made for him. Begin to search for the real meaning of life. This portrays of how people nowadays yearn for faith and finding the truth of their existence after most of secular values have always been there in the postmodern life. In social media nowadays, people start to question something that is missing in their life and begin to search for true belief as their belief have been crushed by the truth of the reality world. This can be seen in the early period of enlightenment, whereby most of the values are secular and have been continuous in these days. The misuse of power, social injustice, and pessimism which have been introduced through drama were now being interrogated as they face the ugly truth from it. This becomes a debate on the concept of secularism and makes society question whether secularism brings freedom in their life. So, is secularism still relevant?